All right. So what should we start out with? How about what's not a high value man?
That's the easiest thing, isn't it? That's the easiest place to begin, isn't it? It's always easy to find. It's always easy to poke like holes in people's like, you know, this is what it's easy to identify what a beta is. It's like more, I think, subjective and relative to decide what's alpha, because too many guys want to individualize it. They want to subjectivize it, I guess, for themselves. And like ever since like day one, like from my very earliest essays all the way up through the first book, there's the whole section on like what is alpha, right? The origin of alpha is an essay I have. Alpha was just actually the first one, and then like the contextual alpha. And it's like what makes you high value? And I don't know why we're just not simply using the term alpha male, because that's pretty much what everybody's like debating right now. What makes you high value? What not? And yet we're still going to the same well. We're still going to the same source, which is, hey, let's ask all these 19-year-old girls what makes you an alpha male, right? Let's go talk to this 30-some-odd girl. Who's, you know, all used up, right? Let's go ask what do girls really want? You know how long I've heard that question asked, and it's always the same answer: whatever I am. Yeah. You know, whatever is closest fits my definition. Or it's usually like when you ask women that, what makes a high value guy, it's whatever serves their most immediate needs, whatever is their most necessitous of at that particular time. So if you ask a girl who's like 19, 20, somewhere around there, and you say, hey, what do you look for in a guy? Like, what makes a high value guy? She's going to tell you a completely different thing than a girl who's like in her epiphany, you know, mid epiphany phase. And you always got to have, you know, he's got to have prospects. He's got to be on his game. And he's got to like puppy dogs. He's got to love his mommy, and, you know, that kind of crap. And it's like, it just depends on what her priorities are at that particular time. So like I said, it's always going to be easier to point out what isn't, because we have so many examples all over the place. It's easy to point that out. Like you look at that one tweet I just retweeted not too long ago. This guy's like almost in a brassiere, and he's like, you know, looks like he's transgender or whatever. And the guy is just this. I mean, he's like Pajama Boy for 2021. You guys remember who Pajama Boy was? But, you know, complete, you know, it's like soy. That's all we talk about, is that this is soy, that's soy. But it's these guys who are still like, what isn't high value to me is still going to be about what's up here. Like, what's your ideology? What is it? What's your belief set? I don't even want to call it ideology. It's like, what's your belief set is the most important thing, because that's going to separate you from money. That's going to separate you from women. That's going to separate you from actually going out and doing something like ambition. That's going to separate you from passion. It's going to separate you from going to the friggin' gym, right? It's whatever you think. Like, if you don't think that there's any value in going to the gym, it starts up here. It's not starting out like, oh, well, you know, I don't have access to the gym. You can make up any reason why you don't do things, but like really where it begins is just right. That's where the beginning of high value is really sort of in your belief set and and I know that sounds like woo-woo magical thinking, but it's what is your operating condition, right? How were you raised up? Like you just did Rich, you just did that thing with Coach Kareem. Is that what the guy's name is? Yeah. And like, I'm sure they're like, I talk whenever I talk with Abu American, or I talk to a guy who's like sort of really, I don't say Orthodox Muslim, but is sort of I want to say practicing or believing Muslim. They're always very specific about what makes a prime kind of masculine guy. And that's I think still one of the beauties of the manosphere is we can still have that conversation, and we can sort of compare notes as to like what makes you alpha, what doesn't make you alpha. Because 9 times out of 10, like I said before, is that it's always going to be whatever your belief set or your operating state really is, because nobody wants to be told they suck, right? Nobody wants to be told you have you have a lower. Basically, what you're saying is you have a lower possibility of reproducing. That's really what you're saying. And your happiness can be found in reproducing and having a family, starting a tribe, and all that kind of stuff. And it's like you have to sort of bust yourself down to zero again and say, what do I believe? What are my belief sets now? What is it that I think is valuable now that I'm red pill aware, now that I'm unplugged, now that I'm, even if you're not entirely unplugged, like your belief sets have changed. What's going to be valuable to you right now, and why, and how do you come to those conclusions?
Yeah. I think it's this intangible side of somebody's personality that really makes them high value, because there is a sense, particularly in this space, it's all about acquisition. It's all about, okay, how many girls have you got? How many cars have you got? How much money have you got? All of that. And that's not to say that a high value man, in inverted commas, wouldn't have those things, because obviously value does attract those things. But equally, you could be a dude who's slept with, say, 1,300 women and is a complete douchebag. Or you could be a guy who has made a bunch of money and is a worthless individual for various reasons, right? So the things that you've acquired don't in themselves make you high value. So it's got to be something else. So why is, say, Rich, who's a multimillionaire, is a high value man, whereas there are other multimillionaires who are just complete dirtbags? You know, I was out with somebody else earlier this week who is known to us in this sphere, met up briefly, had a nice afternoon together. Also a very wealthy man, multimillionaire. He's also a high value guy, but he's not a high value guy because of the stuff he's got. He's a high value guy because of his personal integrity. And I think it's that we've got to get down to.
Yeah, I think a lot of people put way too much emphasis on success or material things that have been acquired as high value. Oh, well, Elon Musk has this business and these cars and all this money. Jeff Bezos has all this money and the success. But he doesn't know how to handle women, doesn't know how to talk to women. He doesn't know how to do a lot of things that probably would put him in a position where his life would be much better than it is, even though he's got a crap load of money.
There's plenty of rich guys without game.
Yes. You know, like money doesn't cure blue pill. And then, you know, he got divorced and he got taken for a lot of money. So you can see that his inadequacy internally led to him getting robbed, basically. Same thing with me. Like I got, you know, beaten into some blue pill stuff through my marriage, and that ended up separating me from my wealth.
What if women throw themselves at a guy? You know, let's say he's like a natural alpha, like a Corey Worthington or some, you know, Chad.
We've established pretty well, though, that women are pretty terrible at choosing.
Yeah, because I mean, I think it really depends on who you ask, how old they are, what stage of their life they're in, if they're a man or a woman, and what their interpretation is. I mean, I'll say this: like, if you got to ask questions like, you know, how do I mean, I've seen guys ask questions like, how do I run a harem? How do I have a threesome? How do I have multiple girlfriends, sort of thing? And then you kind of take a look at their life, and it's like where they live, what they do for a living, what their income is, you know, what the level of game is. They've got a notch count of 4 or something like that, and they want to run a harem. It's like, you need to slow down there, sonny boy. You got a little bit of a foundation to build before you're gonna, you know, even entertain concepts like that. Yeah. You know, you got to get some experience. You got to get your notch count up.
There are levels. There are money.
Black belt.
Yeah, there's levels. It's like, you know, when you get up to the black belt, you know, sort of thing. It's like, I don't know, like I'm in my late 40s and I look around at my life and I run 3 7-figure businesses. I've got a lot going on. I make actually most of my money not on YouTube, you know, despite all the bullshit that I hear. Rich made his money off of simps. Yeah. No, stupid. Outside, okay. This is what I do to entertain myself, to hang out with my boys.
This is your hobby.
So weird. Guys don't get that.
No, but I think that's a big thing with a lot of people nowadays. They want to start at the top. You know, like I had the 16-year-old kid was asking me about life advice and whatever, and he's talking about how he wants to be an MMA promoter. I was like, oh, well, that's promotion, that's sales. So find a product, any product, and figure out if you can sell it. If that's step one. Like, don't start trying to sign fighters and put on this big production and do a show. Like, find a product, any product. Can you sell gum? If you can't sell gum, how the hell are you going to sell out an arena for fight? Yeah, like so I was like, do that. And he's like, well, I don't know about that. I was like, well, then start organizing events with your friends and people. Do it for free. See if you can get 30 people to show up at a park and do this event. And if you can't do that, then you're kind of fucked. You got to start somewhere.
That's funny. That's like all I did for the longest time. I still kind of do it right now. I mean, when I got into liquor, like the most things, like as an art director, as a promoter, like I'm doing brand promotions and stuff like that. All of when I learned how to do that, by the way, John, is I learned that in playing in bands, because I was always the guy with the artistic talent. So I was the guy who was making the flyers, produce them, and like I would make the logos, and everybody loved the stuff that I did for my own bands. So they started hitting me up. Can you do our flyers? Can you do our posters? Can you do our photography? I'm like, yes, I can. And that's how that made a good chunk of change when I was in my mid-20s.
And so that's a great example of you put yourself 100% into a goal, but like other things pop up. Like your end goal for doing that was like to make your band famous and be performing and do awesome stuff. But then other people saw what you're doing, and then you had an opportunity to pivot and make money.
Yeah,
that's what like, no, I'm only going to do my band stuff, and I'm going to be tunnel vision just for my band. But
most of my understanding of when it comes, I mean, I have formal education now, but like back then I certainly didn't. And it usually came from like just seeing how things work firsthand. Like you're down in the trenches and they're saying like, oh, hey, well, you do our flyers, because flyers are here today and gone tomorrow, right? I used to have to do them by hand, and then we have to put them on like a Xerox machine and bang out a whole bunch of them. There's money me doing it. There's money me reproducing it. There's money in the distribution of it. And I was like, and all it is just flyers. And this is pre-internet. So just being down there and experiencing it and figuring it out on your own. That's another thing I was going to say. An aspect of a high quality guy is being clever, like understanding, like seeing patterns like that you go, I can make some money off of that, or I can do something with this. I think recognizing opportunity is one of the key elements of being a high value guy.
I'm just going to expand on that, because I talked about this a couple months ago, where one of the most important predictors of success in entrepreneurship is having an ability to solve problems. So to Rollo's point, if you want to be high value, problems are going to come at you all day long in your life, gentlemen. Doesn't matter if it's from work, if you're self-employed, if you're in sales, doesn't matter what you're doing. They're going to keep women, guys are all, I want to run a harem and have 10, like, do you understand how much game you have to have and how much fuck you money you have to run a harem of 10 women? Right? Because you're going to be putting up with 10 times more problems than a regular guy. Right? So like, just understand that being able to solve problems is an incredibly important skill when it comes to creating value for yourself. If you want to, get up there on the top shelf, if you know what I'm saying. And quick shout out to Michael for just reminding guys to hit the like button. Thanks. Actually, let me grab the link here. I'm going to drop the link if you guys are on like Facebooks or Twitter or whatever, and just come on over and join us on YouTube. It just helps me out. Thanks.
So a lot of this, it comes down to competency. Are you competent? Are you competent with women? Are you competent with money? Are you competent with friends and relationships? Are you competent with not fucking your life up and going to jail?
Yes, because a lot of the things that you will then acquire will come as a result of that competency. But it's not the baubles at the end. It's not the shiny baubles that you end up with. It's actually the competency itself that makes the dude high value or not. Because also as well, remember, people get stuff falling into their lap, don't they? I mean, something like the Corey Worthington example, sort of big suburban house, but is his parents. So, he was able to sort of have that big party or whatever. But it's really looking at the core aspects of yourself as a human being, as an effective man. That's the important thing here.
What about level of income? Like, how important is that? Like, do you have to be a top 5% income earner to be considered a top shelf man?
If you have everything you need, no. Like if you have a farm in the Midwest somewhere and you own the land and like you have chickens and you're throwing fresh water and like you're happy doing that and you can still game chicks and whatever, like, there are plenty of Mormons with a lot of kids and I'm sure they don't have to make tons of money. I mean, you still have to feed everybody, but I don't think it's 100% necessary.
I always think like when I talk about like what is alpha, what's not, and I've always said, there's scoundrel alphas and there's like hero, like there's the upstanding man of the community kind of alpha, right? And that's usually what when women get to be like in their epiphany phase, they start looking for Captain America, right? They start looking for Superman instead of Batman or Iron Man or even the Joker in some cases, right? I mean, they're looking for a different alpha. Yeah, they're looking for the guy who is leaning more towards the provisioning side. They still want a hot guy. They still want some sort of element of like hot, fun, excitable, sex, but those opportunities, finding a guy who focuses on, who still has some sort of alpha gravitas, I guess, and is still a good provider, that guy is really tough. Now, to your point, Rich, do you have to have a lot of money? Are there like outward, like are there results? Is there residue, right? Is there residue of your success? And what that means is do you have a hot car? Do you have a nice house? How many kids do you have? What do you have in your life that is sort of like, I don't want to say receipts, but like what is the evidence? What is the byproduct of you being a high value guy? And that's gonna be contextual, right? Because like a guy who's living in Argentina somewhere, subsistence farm somewhere, that guy's still not a high value guy in that particular context or in that local sexual marketplace. There might be a guy there who is like, he's a good man, right? He's a good dude. He doesn't have a Lamborghini, but by order of degree or by like context, like by region and by socioeconomic circumstances, that guy might be the hottest dude in the village, right? So he doesn't have a YouTube channel. He doesn't have
what a beta.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we have to stop thinking in terms of first world countries and first world consciousness here, because it's like there's guys, like there's dudes in Russia that would like kick every one of our asses on this on this panel right now. Does that make them a high value guy? Well, I don't know. It just sort of depends on what his sort of socioeconomic context is for where he's at right now. And that's the difference, I think, between the local sexual marketplace and the global sexual marketplace. So yeah, if you have a lot of money, if you have a lot of pull, remember, wealth enforces will, and wealth is a part of your, as a guy. Powerful men throughout history have had three things. I think.
Money.
Yeah, well, money is one of them. That's resources. Powerful men like chieftains, emperors, kings, the guy who runs the town kind of thing. All of these guys, it is to be male is to have these three things. And the first one is resources. That's number one. Number two is territory and an ability to protect that territory, because those resources usually come from the territory that you're able to expand and defend. And then number three is women, lots and lots and lots of women. So if it's the emperor in, dynastic China, he's got the forbidden city full of his concubines guarded by eunuchs with their dicks cut off so they can't reproduce with those chicks. If it's the chief in the Amazon rainforest, they go and they create the concubine pen so that the chief can actually go and nail these chicks. And then by order of degree, right? Like in your importance, if you're like the king high shit warrior, maybe you've got some concubines. If you're the shaman, you got a few, but not as much as the warrior, maybe not as much as the chief kind of thing. But you're expanding territory, you're expanding your resources. And those are really the three things that historically have made for a powerful guy. So when we look at like kings and emperors and chieftains and all that kind of stuff, and now we can point towards like, we can look at career wise. We can look at things in terms of career, because now we've become more, industrialized and everything. So but the same dynamic applies to the powerful man who was the tribal chieftain as it does to the guy who is, the CEO of whatever big major corporation he is.
What about influence though? Because that's one that I didn't hear you mention really.
Of all that too. I would say that that's a byproduct of that.
Well, what about Machiavellian ability or ability to let's say network or get in with the right people? Because I was thinking about Rasputin when you were speaking, and I'm not sure whether we put him down as a high quality, high value man, but nevertheless, he was a dude basically from the village who came into, and became embedded in the Russian royal family. And he had the other things that you mentioned, he had the women, he had the influence. He wasn't the top guy. He wasn't the czar or whatever, but he certainly finagled his way in there. So is that sort of Machiavellian ability, that ability to influence others, could that political ability, if you like, maybe that plays into it a bit? Because you could get the dude who's not the multimillionaire. He's not the guy who owns the Lambos and gets access to all of the clubs, but he's mates with that guy because he's got very good social skills, and so he gets some of the attendant benefits.
I would say so. I think a lot of that comes down to like sort of being clever. Remember when we talk about one of the uncomfortable truths, I think, about the 80-20 rule that we talk about in the manosphere for so long is that the guys who are in the 80% have to figure something out. They have to figure an end run around the filter that keeps them from solving their reproductive problem. And honestly, I think a lot of human intelligence comes from a necessity to try to figure out how to get in that girl's pants, and by order of degree. I'm not saying all these beta males are trying to figure out game or something. No, they become innovative, they become creative, they become competent in things that, like, they create a dishwasher, right? Or they create a new invention, or they create something that is going to, it raises their status, but it raises their status in a competency hierarchy rather than a dominance hierarchy, because they can't compete in a dominance hierarchy. So instead of trying to be a bigger, badder, chimpanzee to beat the alpha male, you invent the gun, right? You invent something that can take that guy down. You invent something. You use human intelligence. I think is really the product of beta males and alpha males sort of trying to figure out how to stay on top of the game, more or less, and that drives civilization. Honestly, that's one of the reasons why I think, killing patriarchy and installing a gynocentric social order is really one of the worst things we could possibly have done for the state of humanity right now, because it kills innovation. It sedates the 80%ers. It keeps them jerking off and just.
Why do you think everything that comes out of Hollywood for the last 20 years has been a repeat? There's nothing new.
There's no creativity.
That's the same formula.
And that's driven by the need to solve the reproductive problem. If you remove that need, you satiate that need, you sedate that 80%, you stagnate. That's when a society stagnates. Give them everything they want.
Yeah, it's going to be even worse with communists or socialism start giving out monthly checks. That's happening right now. People don't want to go to work right now because their stimmy checks are paying them more than the jobs are.
You don't have to figure anything out. If it shows up in your mailbox in the morning, it shows up on your internet, you don't have to do anything. It's creative for you. I talked about this with Ryan on, I think it was Thursday. The internet is creative for you right now. You don't have to be, there's no reason to, unless you're like from a different generation, you're of a different mindset and you're more driven. I think one of the reasons why we have such an audience, like the Lost Boys audience, or they're so purposeless, is because they have everything pretty much taken care of for them. You remove them from that state of I don't want to say satiation, but like you remove them from that state of having things done for them, more or less, they'll find ways to figure it out. That's the whole reason for audiences, for like, what makes for a high value guy? Why would guys even watch that in the first place? Because they're trying to figure out how to be better at something. They're trying to figure out how to do an end run, how to be more competent, how to be more dominant. Those are really the two things that I think, from a mental state, from a belief state, that's where you got to get. There's plenty of drug dealers in prison who are alpha males. There are plenty of gang leaders who are out. There are plenty of guys. If you were, I would argue this, if you were embedded in like Antifa right now, you would see the same dynamic play out from within that group. There's going to be guys who are going to be more dominant, who are going to be, it's a tribe, basically. It's there's the powerful guys, and what are they going to have? Territory, resources, and chicks. And they're there because that's what's going to solve their problems, or what they think is going to solve their problems from within that context. So the sexual marketplace doesn't change. The dynamics of it doesn't change. Only the context changes. So if you're in the goth clubs, or if you're in the nerd culture, or if you're in the Amish, I will guarantee you go to the Amish Dutch country in Pennsylvania, the same dynamic applies. It's just a different context. And so what are the common, here's the operative of this whole show. What are the commonalities between all of those contexts that sort of define that conventional, dominant, competent guy? What are those core strengths, those core competencies?
I'm going to pull you out of the solo layout and apologize for the super chat covering your head, Troy, but Raph directed this at you, asking about age limit for a man to be high value. Pulled up a picture there of Mel Gibson at, I don't know what he is there, maybe 65, somebody said when that was posted earlier. I don't know if that's his girlfriend or just some piece that he's hanging with at the time, but if you're jacked, you have money, you have influence, I don't think that age has much of a bearing on it. I don't know. What do you think, man?
I don't think there's any age limit on it at all, to be honest. I think that it's something that, until the day you die, you can be high value if you look after your fundamentals.
I think even guys. Sorry?
Oh, I was saying Leonardo DiCaprio, his age limit for girls he dates
like
is
26.
25.
Yeah.
I think 25.
And like even Hugh Hefner, when he died, he was still surrounded by gorgeous women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Story, money, and chicks.
Yeah.
How
there
would
is a difference. There is a distinction
with the Playboy Mansion when he had the 3 girlfriends. You think they'd even put that on TV today?
No.
No,
There is a distinction though between being high value for women versus being high value amongst a group of guys. I think it's because obviously again Corey Worthington, no doubt there were girls who were sleeping with him at the time. So in that sense, he was high value, but was he actually high value? Well, clearly not. So it comes down to the old thing, isn't it? That guys will value different qualities in another man that they work with, or they network with, or they associate with, than the things that women find attractive. So we have to be conscious of the distinction between those two varieties of high value, and one does not necessarily equal the other, because you can be sleeping with a load of women, but you're not high value in any sense that other guys would recognize or be amenable to.